Hello, everyone, and welcome to AI 42. We are back again here, and hello, Gosia, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. But we have today a really great presenter, Leon Gordon. Hello, Leon.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing today?
Yeah, pretty fine. As you can see here, the sky is clear blue, at least where I am. So can't expect anything less. What about you?
Excellent. Yes, very good, very good. Thank you. We finally have blue skies here in the UK, so I can't complain at all. Thank you.
That's nice. Yeah, so we can't wait here because I think it's going to be a really interesting session here tonight. But before we start that, we just have some information about our user group that we want to share.
So hello again. Today we'll have a session with Leon Gordon that we'll introduce later on. And we wanted to start with introduction to AI42. So the motivation for starting AI42 comes from the recognition that there is no good starting material. And AI42 is a strong team consisting of 3 Microsoft AI MVPs that strive to provide you with a valuable series of lectures. And AI42 aims to provide you with the necessary know-how that can help land your dream job as long as it's related to fields of data science or machine learning. The concept is simple and involves professionals from all around the globe explaining to you the underlying mathematics, statistics, probability, calculation, data science, and machine learning techniques. We'll guide you through all you have, and all you have to do is follow our channel, enjoy the content every second week, fill it with the real-life cases and expert experience. Don't you worry, we all started from the scratch, and we are happy to help you build up from here. You can always stop and rewind the videos or ask the clarification in the comment section. We hope assist you on the wonderful journey and have you as a speaker on one day. By creating cross-collaboration with other organizations, we can give the best opportunities to broaden your network in the AI and data science communities. With the combination of our offered services, we would support less fortunate people and organizations that are not that recognized yet, even though they deserve it.
Yes. So our organization is sponsored by Microsoft and Miles, and we are very humbled by all the support that we get from our contributors as well. And we would like to thank Levente Pongor for all these beautiful graphics that we have here on our stream, and also Mina Marie for the cool intro music that we have before our events. And we're also in close collaboration with C# Corner and the global AI community. So our lectures or our sessions will be available also on their YouTube channel, additionally to our own media. And we would also like to thank Nicolette Toth, who creates and reviews all our text content that we use on our website, on our advertisements, and also during our sessions. And if you want to know more about us, you can follow us here on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter to become a part of a growing community where we will share knowledge and fun. And you will find all the information that we'll bring to you at an advanced level in the field of AI and data science. And you can also see our recorded sessions on our YouTube channel, and you can find our upcoming sessions on our meetup page if you scan these QR codes that you can see here on this slide.
We also have a code of conduct outline expectations. So if you feel any unacceptable behavior, please let us know, and we are committed to provide an welcoming and inspiring community for all. So be friendly and patient, and be welcoming and be respectful with each other.
Yes, nice, Gosia. Then I think we can get back here to Leon.
Yes.
So hi again, Leon.
Hi, everyone.
So I think now it's time here for have a little bit more introduction here to Leon. So Leon Gordon is a Microsoft Data Platform MVP based in the UK, working as an independent consultant. And he's worked with Microsoft Power BI for 5 years and with the Microsoft Data Platform for over 9 years. And during this time, he's developed end-to-end big data reporting and analytical systems, and also optimized numerous existing Power BI reporting solutions. And Leon also operates as a chair for the Microsoft Power BI, the UK community group, and also the Data DNA Data Visualization Challenge on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Thank you very much for such a warm introduction.
Yes. So what will you share with us here tonight, Leon?
Hopefully, a very interesting session. So today we're going to take a look at machine learning within Power BI. As part of today's session, we're going to take a look at how we can solve a common business problem. First and foremost, using Power BI, some of the premium functionality or premium per user functionality. And then we'll also look at how we can solve this without the need for a premium SKU or premium license within Power BI, using some third-party tools and Python as well.
Oh, that sounds very interesting. So for the audience, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and then we will have a Q&A session after the presentation.
So Leon, I think now it's your time. The stage is yours.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Excellent. Hopefully you can see my screen okay. Fantastic. So today we're going to take a look at an introduction to machine learning within Power BI. As Hakan and Gosia already mentioned, they've already given me a fantastic introduction. So some of these links of where you can find me will be available within the chat. So please do feel free to reach out to me on any of these platforms. It would be great to hear from you. So what are we going to cover today? In today's session, first and foremost, we're going to take a brief look at what is machine learning, often referred to by the acronym ML. Then we're going to understand how we can benefit from machine learning within Power BI, before looking at how to create a machine learning model in Power BI Premium or Premium per user, often referred to as PPU. And then we'll go into how to create a machine learning model in Power BI for free. And I'll also, at the end of the session, give you some resources to continue your learning.
Excuse me, Leon. Would you mind, minimizing, because right now you are sharing your entire screen thing.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you very much for, let's see if we can get rid of that.
Yes.
Have you got that back?
Yes, excellent.
Let's just pick this back up. Thank you very much. Okay, so what is machine learning? So machine learning is a branch of artificial intelligence, also referred to as AI, that teaches computers to do what comes naturally to humans and animals. And the key here is to learn from experience. Machine learning algorithms use computational methods to learn information directly from data without relying on a predetermined equation as a model. So the key elements we want to take from here is that we're looking to make a machine learn from experience and learn information directly from data. So with that being said, how can we benefit from machine learning within Power BI? So we can look at real-time predictions, customer churn analysis, customer leads and conversion, or we can also look at how we can predict fraud. Now, within today's session, we're going to focus on customer leads. And as I mentioned previously, a particular business problem, which we're going to look to solve. So we have a fictitious organization where the problem in this example is they have a £3 million lead spend. So this fictitious sales organization are currently spending £3 million per year to purchase leads. Now, as we can see, those leads then go through the sales funnel, so through a sales call, a follow-up call, a conversion, and ultimately some of those leads then convert into a sale. Now, in this example, we can see that only 4.3% of those leads are actually converting. So we have a two-pronged problem here. Obviously, the business is spending a large amount of their revenue on the lead spend, and also this lead spend is not converting at a terribly good rate for them. So what we want to do here is optimize the leads that this business is purchasing. So it would be great if they could purchase leads which they knew or could predict were more likely to convert into sales. And on the flip side of this, that should see their conversion rate improve, because obviously we're predicting leads which have a higher likelihood of being able to convert. So with that being the problem, let's take a look at how we can use machine learning within Power BI, Power BI Premium. So I'm just going to go into our live demo, and first and foremost, we do have the GitHub available, and the link should be available for you within the chat to this GitHub repo if you do want to follow along. So with that being said, we're going to take a look at, first and foremost, our prospective buyer information. So we're going to open this in a new tab. And I'm also, for the purposes of this, just going to take a look at our sales training data also. So just while this opens, we have our prospective buyer.csv. Now, what this is our lead information. Okay, so this is our 3 million worth of lead spend that we're looking to start to see if we can predict whether there's a likelihood of these leads converting. So we can tell that they've come from a transactional system because we have our buyer key and our alternate key here. And we also have some additional information, which is our first name, our last name, our age, our marital status, the gender, the yearly income, the total children, the number of those children of which are at home, the education, their occupation, their house owner flag, number of cars owned, the city, the state province code, and the postal code as well. So we can see that within this lead information, it's very fresh to the organization. Now, within our other CSV, our sales training CSV, we have historic purchaser information. Now, within this information, you'll notice that we have some common attributes within this data set. So we have age, marital status, gender, yearly income, the total children, the number of children at home, the education, their occupation, their house owner flag, the number of cars owned, state province code, the postal code, and we also have an additional column at the end here, which is our key column. This is our buyer column. So this is, as this is historic information, we can see whether or not this individual has actually been a buyer with our organization or not previously. And as the name denotes here, sales training, we're going to use this historic data set to train our machine learning model to be able to predict whether our leads, so our prospective buyers CSV, whether they will convert for us. So to do this, we're going to use Power BI Premium. So we're going to go ahead and go over to the Power BI workspace. I already have a premium per user workspace available to me, which is the sandbox. And we're going to go ahead and start to build this out. Now, bear in mind that this session is going to be very demo heavy, and we are going to cover quite a lot of concepts at a high level in an effort to stay on time and to get through all of the material that we need to in today's session. So what we want to do is go ahead and create a new data flow. Now, for some reason on my system, I have to do this twice. On your system, hopefully you just have to select it the first time. And what this will allow us to do is build out a new data flow. And what we want to do is define our new tables by going ahead and selecting Add New Tables. Okay. Now, what will happen here is we'll be asked to choose a data source using Power Query Online. Those of you that are familiar with Power BI and Power Query will be familiar with this screen. So in this example, we want to use a text/CSV data source connector to start to connect to our previously mentioned data sets. So with that being the case, I'm just going to come back over to our prospective buyer CSV. I'm going to go ahead and get the raw version and go ahead and grab that URL by copying. And then we're going to go ahead and paste that file path, paste that into our file path or URL. We're going to go ahead and select next. And in the background, Power BI will just be passing that file and previewing the first 200 lines of that data set. Now, we can see in this example here that our data types have been correctly defined and that our first row has actually been reclassified as headers. So we don't need to make any transformations to our data in this instance. So we can go ahead and select Transform Data and we can go ahead and select Save and Close. Okay. Now, again, Power BI will ask us first and foremost to name our data flow so we can save it. And in this example, I'm just going to call this ML_AI42. Go ahead and save this. And then we'll be asked whether we want to schedule a refresh for this data flow. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, we don't want to schedule a refresh. So let's go ahead and select Close. And then now we have our prospective buyer data set as part of our data flow. We want to go ahead and add our next table, which is going to be our historic sales training data. So let's go ahead and select text and CSV again. What we'll need to do is go back and get our sales training data. So just go ahead and grab the raw version of this file, copy the URL, and we will go ahead and paste that in. We'll select Next. And once again, Power BI will just go ahead and pass that data set, previewing back to us the first 200 rows and correctly identifying again our data types and our column headers as our first rows. We don't need to make any transformations in this instance, so we can go ahead and select Save and Close. Okay. Excellent. So very simply and straightforwardly, we've been able to ingest both our prospective buyer and our sales training data sets into our Power BI cloud-based workspace, ready to start to build out our machine learning model. Okay. So at the top here, we can go ahead and select Machine Learning Models. And then we're then greeted with our Power BI machine learning or AutoML wizard as such. So if you are new to machine learning models, then as the screen suggests, this is where we're going to firstly go ahead, create and train our model. So to do this, we're going to select our training data. We're then going to choose a model type. Then we'll go ahead and train our model. Once we have our model trained, we can look at ways in which we might be able to improve our model. So in this instance, that will be either iterating and retraining by looking to evaluate and customize our model until it's optimized. And then finally, we'll go ahead and apply our model and be able to start to run predictions on our lead data. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Excellent. So we're now into the Power BI UI. And as we mentioned, we're going to go ahead and start to define our machine learning model. So first and foremost, we need to understand what we want to predict. Now, in this instance, we want to use our sales training data. And what we want to predict is our buyer. So we want to identify whether an individual did end up becoming a buyer or not. Okay, so let's go ahead and click Next. Now, in the background, once again, Power BI will just be passing the information that's being presented to it to start to recommend a prediction model for us. Now, in this instance, as we can see over here on this side, Power BI has correctly suggested that we'll be looking to use a binary prediction model. Now, in this instance, we look to use a binary prediction to determine the likelihood of sales leads converting or the probability of a customer responding to a marketing campaign. So in this instance, Power BI has correctly suggested the correct machine learning model for us. If it hadn't, we can come over to this option here and select a different model. Now, as we can see, that when we choose to select a different model, we have both classification and regression machine learning models available to us. We've already touched on the binary prediction, but we also have general classification, which allows us to distinguish between 3 or more outcomes. And examples of this can include classifying credit card applicants into groups of those who have good credit, bad credit, or those that require further analysis. Ultimately, we could also use a regression machine learning model where we can estimate a numeric value, which is generally used for estimating house prices in a market based on regional factors. With that being said, as I previously mentioned, Power BI has correctly recommended a binary prediction. So let's go ahead and reselect that. Now that we've selected our model, we need to choose our target outcome. As we mentioned previously, we're interested in the buyer column. And what we want to understand is when we have a buyer that is true, when we have an actual buyer. We'll then be asked, how should we label the predictions within the model training report? And when we have a match, we want to label it buyer. And if we have a mismatch, we want to label it not buyer. Okay, so now that we have our labeling in place, let's go ahead and select next. Whereby, once again, Power BI, based on the inputs that we're giving it, it will start to look at the different attributes within the data set to identify which of those have a low correlation with our target outcome and which of those don't. So with that being the case, here we can see that we should select the data we want to study within our model. Now, on the left-hand side, we have some of the attributes within our data set, commonly referred to as features within the machine learning community. And with this being the case, again, Power BI has recommended us some suggested features to use based on their correlation with buyer. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to go against the recommendation, and I'm going to add some of the additional features that have a low correlation, so I can show you how that works within the reporting as we go through this demonstration. So then we're going to go ahead and select next, and then we can name and train our model. So for the purposes of this, again, I'm going to call this ML underscore model underscore AI 42. And if you were putting this in place in your own environments or production, then I always recommend that you leave a description here, not just for yourself, but potentially for other developers and also for key stakeholders within the business that may be looking at this machine learning model from time to time. As we go down to our next option here, we start to look at our training time for the model. Now, similarly to myself, the longer I spend training on the subject and reiterating that process, the better I tend to get it, fingers crossed. It's very similar from a machine learning perspective in this scenario, whereby the longer we train the model, the more it reiterates over the data and tests the underlying predictions, hopefully the more accurate it will be. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to set this to our minimum threshold of 5 minutes. But as I mentioned, we are able to go up to 360 minutes within the Power BI service. So again, guiding through our wizard, Power BI will tell us what will happen next. So as is common practice with the majority of machine learning models, we'll take a statistically significant sample of the data using 80% of the model to base out our predictions. And then with the remaining 20%, we will reiterate over that data using our predictions to train our machine learning model. So let's go ahead and select Save and Train. With that being the case, we can see that our changes have been saved, and we can see that our new ML underscore AI 42 data flow is now refreshing within the Power BI service. Now, as we mentioned previously, we have set this to the lowest threshold of 5 minutes. So this will continue in the background to train the machine learning model and base its predictions off of the back of that. Now, as we're quite short on time today, what I will do is I will go to our previously deployed version of the same machine learning model and present you back to the screen that you would be going to once your machine learning model has completed training. Okay, so within here, we can see that we have our prediction model. And what we're interested in at the moment, first and foremost, is our training report. So we successfully ran our machine learning model. And by using Power BI in the service and AutoML, we're then presented with a training report, which basically gives a breakdown of how the machine learning model has been trained and how it's performed as well during that training. So I'll just go to our first tab in our report, which is our model performance. And again, as this is only an introductory into the art of what's possible within Power BI, I'm going to highlight some areas here and gloss over some other areas within this report. So we can see how our model was evaluated. We're told that there was a test set of 1,563 records, whereby this was compared with the predicted outcomes based on our initial threshold. So we can see here that we have our area under the curve, or the AUC, and the performance based on that, which again, probably out of the scope of an introductory session. And we can see our element here, which starts to take a look at our top predictors. Now, by clicking here, we can go in and we can start to see how our features performed based on the influence. Now, you may remember that earlier on in the session, I mentioned that I was going to select some additional features, even though Power BI had recommended that they had a low correlation with Bayer. Now, the reason I selected them is that you can see that those low correlations were indeed correct as we start to go through the features. So Power BI was actually correct in recommending those not to be selected. So if we start to take a look at our top predictors by influence, we start to build up a profile of the likely buyer or the likely lead that generally buys with our fictional company. So let's take a look at age, for example. So by selecting age, we'll be presented with another visual that allows us to see that the majority of our buyers are either 46 and less or between 46 and 59 years old. Similarly, by taking a look at marital status, we can start to see that the likelihood of a buyer is that they will be single. And so on as we go on, we can start to see that the total children of the buyer is likely to be 1. And additionally, we can start to go on and start to build up a profile of our end buyer. Moving on through our report, we can start to look here and we can start to take a brief look at our confusion matrix. Now, this may look, for those of you not familiar with the confusion matrix, you might be asking, how do I interpret this? So what I've got is just a brief visual that you can see here in terms of how to read a confusion matrix. So thank you for dataaspirant.com for providing this. So we can see that in our top left-hand corner here, the predictions within the model, this is the amount of true positives that we want in this scenario. And again, with our prediction in our bottom right-hand corner, this is the amount of true negatives. So for our machine learning model, we're interested in the amount of true negatives that have been predicted and also the amount of true positives that have been correctly predicted within this scenario. So let's just come back to our Power BI report. Now we can see that we have a lot of true positives which have been predicted by this machine learning model. But we can also see that we don't have any true negatives which have been predicted, and we do have some some false positives that are being predicted by this model. Now you may see on the right-hand side here that we have 2 elements that we can control, which are again recall and precision. Again, it would be for probably a slightly more in-depth session to be able to go into these in a bit more detail. But what I want you to be able to see off the basis of this session is that once we move or increase our precision, let's see how our confusion matrix changes. So we can now start to see that we have less false positives being identified, and we have more true positives being identified. Similarly, we also have less true positives being identified. So I would say that in terms of precision and recall, you need to kind of adjust these to tailor your needs. But for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to sit around 0.5. Okay. And that's about right for where we want to be for this demonstration. There is some more information available for the cost-benefit analysis, but again, probably escapes this session. And we can have a brief look at our accuracy report. Now, again, the key to probably call out as part of this session is just these visuals here in terms of our model prediction. So we can see that our teal dotted line here is where we would be as an ideal. We can see that how our model actually performed against that ideal, which we're currently within the middle. And finally, we can see where the model would perform as a random guess. Okay, so again, we can see that our model is probably performing very much within the middle of an ideal and a random guess. Now, finally, we can go in and start to take a look at our training details. And if I just scroll back to the top, we can start to get a bit more information in terms of how the model was trained. We can understand how many of the rows were actually sampled, how many rows we used for training rows, how many iterations were run against the model, against the underlying data to test the predictions. And we can also see which model Power BI used in this example as well. We get a bit more information in terms of how the model performed with every iteration as well. And finally, we start to understand a bit more information around the features and we selected with their column data types. And also we can see the model threshold, which again, in this example, we set to 0.05. So with that being said, our model has been successfully trained. We've taken a look at the report that we've been generated off the back of it. And if you're following this along at home, we can go ahead and apply our model. Okay. So by selecting apply our model, we're then able to start to apply our buyer prediction to our lead data. So we can select our drop-down box here. And in this example, we would like to select our prospective buyer data set. And what we want to call our prediction column in this example is going to be outcome. And we've already said that our threshold, so our precision and our recall balance, will be around 0.5. So if you are following along at home, then please do click Save and Apply. In the example I have here, we've already done this. So I'm just going to present you back to the screen that you would be presented with once applying that model. Okay. And this is that screen. So you may remember that at the beginning of this session, we started with sales training and our prospective buyer tables. We now have 4 additional tables available to us within our data flow, one being our training data. So this is a data set that just shows the data that was used to train our model. Then we have our buyer prediction testing data. Now this is the data that was used, the 20% that was used to test our model. And then finally, we have our buyer prediction explanations. So this is an explanation of why the machine learning model predicted the outcomes it did. And a table that we're most interested in is here, which is our prospective buyer enriched buyer prediction. So this is our lead data, which now has a prediction for each of those leads on whether they will be a prospective buyer for us or not. So our work here within the Power BI service is done. So let's go ahead and load up a new Power BI report and understand how we can then look to use that data within a real business scenario. So we'll just load up Power BI desktop and we'll be greeted with our UI wizard to discuss how we would like to proceed in terms of getting data or opening an existing report. Now, in this example, what we want to do is go ahead and get data. And again, we'll be walked through a list of data sources that we would like to get our data from. We just wait for this splash screen to load. Hopefully the demo gods are being kind to us. If not, I'll just fire up a new iteration. Just make sure it hasn't opened elsewhere. Here we go. There we go. Okay, so the data that we're interested in getting is, remember that in Power BI service, we've created a new data flow. So what we want to do is use our Power BI data flows connector and go ahead and connect to our Power BI data flow. Now, this will connect us to our workspace using my current credentials. And we'll be presented with some options to start to explore that workspace. As we know, that workspace was called Sandbox. And the one that we're interested in at the moment is our previously deployed version. If you were following along at home, this will be your new data flow. So let's go ahead and expand that. And as I mentioned, the new table that we're interested in is our prospective buyer enriched buyer prediction data set. So let's go ahead and select that. And we'll start to get a preview of the data. Now, let's go ahead and transform that data so we can take a bit more of an in-depth look using Power Query. And once that data loads, we can start to see that this is in fact our lead data. So we have our transactional system keys, we have our first and last name, our age, marital status, all of our features. But as we start to scroll to the end of this data set, we now have 3 new columns. Okay, the column that we're most interested in is the buyer prediction, so our outcome. So this is the prediction on whether our machine learning model feels that this individual will be a buyer or not. We have the prediction score. So this is the weighting behind that score in terms of how accurate the machine learning model thought that prediction was. And again, we have our final column, which is a JSON breakdown. Sorry, not our final column. We have the second to final column, which is a JSON breakdown of why the prediction was predicted to be what it is. And then we also have our final column, which is an explanation index. Now, normally for reporting purposes, these 2 columns would be of no use, but let's go ahead and just close and apply our load of the data. And then we can just see this data start to come through. So once this data has loaded through into our Power BI file, we can go ahead and open our fields up, and we're going to put together some rudimentary visuals just so you can see how we can utilize machine learning model to report back to the business. So we're going to choose our first and last name of our individuals. We then want to take a look at their prediction outcome, and we want to take a look at their prediction score. Just going to make this table visual slightly bigger, and we're also going to put into place a very rudimentary filter for the purposes of this session to allow us to be able to filter our data. So as we can see on the left-hand side here, we have our leads first name, last name, their prediction outcome, and their prediction score. So let's go ahead and score prediction score, descending, and we can start to then filter out the leads, okay? So if we start to take a look at those leads, which our machine learning model has predicted to be buyers, we can take this information and present it back to the business as a set of leads that are more likely to convert. How likely are they to convert? Well, based on our machine learning model prediction score, we can identify the likelihood of this conversion. Similarly, we can do exactly the same for those that the machine learning model feels are going to be unlikely to convert. This becomes very powerful from a sales perspective, as we can start to give our salespeople leads that are likely to convert earlier on in the campaign. And we can also save money by not purchasing leads which we know are going to be unlikely to convert based on some of the features that we've run through within this model. So with that being said, that brings our first demonstration to an end. And let's move forward, and let's try to understand how we can continue to make the machine learn, but for free within Power BI. And please do bear in mind, as we can see from a very tired and somber looking version of iRobot there, no machines were harmed in the making of this webinar. So let's go ahead and jump into our next demonstration. And to follow along with our next demonstration, you may need to install the Microsoft C++ build tools to enable some of the libraries within your system. And the link for this will be in the chat. And also, we're going to start to utilize some external tools. And I'll just give you a brief overview of those external tools before we move into our session. So the alternative tools that we're going to use is going to be Anaconda, which is probably the easiest platform to use to perform Python, R, and data science and machine learning within a single machine, one of my favorite builds. And also we're going to use Pycaret, which is an open source low-code machine learning library created by a gentleman called Moez Ali. So I recommend that you follow him as well. So with that being said, let's just dive back in. If you don't have Anaconda installed on your machine, then please do go ahead and get the Anaconda personal distribution, which is available for free. The link will be available within the chat. And again, on this system, I already have Anaconda installed. So we're going to go ahead and open up the Anaconda command prompt. Again, with an effort to stay on time, we're going to fly through this at quite a pace and gloss over some of the more technical aspects. So as you can see, once we've loaded our Anaconda command prompt, we're then within a base environment. So in this example, what we want to do is create a new environment, or a container as such, where we can start to load our Python libraries and use this within Power BI and to use our Pycaret module to build out our machine learning model. So let's go ahead and let's activate a new environment, and let's call this data science _UG. Go ahead and select enter. Now this environment already exists on this system, so it's gone quite quickly. In your example, this may take slightly longer, and we can see here that we're now within our data science _UG environment. So what we want to do now within this environment is start to install our tools. So to do that, we're going to use the conda command, and we're going to go ahead and install pip. Now pip is a library which just allows us to install other libraries very quickly within Python. And so again, this should go through relatively quickly, as pip is already installed within this system. On your system, this may take a little bit more time than the demonstration that we're seeing here today. So once pip is installed, we want to go ahead and use pip, so use our pip command to install Pycaret. Okay, go ahead and select enter. Again, all of the requirements are already satisfied within this system as Pycaret is already installed, but within your system, this may follow through and ask you to install all of those libraries. Okay. Once this is completed, so just bear with it a moment. Excellent. Once that's completed, we then have our new Python environment, which has been established. We have our tools that we need created, and we need to make Power BI aware of this install. So to do so, let's go over to Power BI. Let's start up a new report for the purposes of demonstration. And what we want to do is make Power BI aware of where our Python installation or our environment has been installed. So with that being the case, once we're greeted with the wizard, we can go ahead and close that. We want to go over to File, Options and Settings. We want to go into Options. And once we are in Options, we want to take a look at our global options, and we want to go down to Python scripting. Okay. Now, what we want to select here is we want to make Power BI aware that we have an other home directory, and we want to point it towards our new environment. So in this case, this has been installed to my local user in Anaconda, and our environment is data science _UG. Once you've selected that environment, you can go ahead and select OK, and Power BI is now set up, ready to run Python scripts. So very similarly to where we were previously within the Power BI service, we now need to go away and get our data. So let's go ahead and select Get Data up here. Actually, let's open it up into the UI so we can see all of our options. And once this opens, now previously on Power Query Online, we were able to use the text/CSV data source connector. Now, for the purposes of using Power BI Desktop, we actually need to use the web connector in this example to be able to connect to GitHub and be able to pull down both our lead data and our sales training data. So let's just go back to our GitHub. We can get our prospective buyer data set here by going to the raw version. Once again, copying the URL. Let's head back to Power BI Desktop and just paste that URL in. Once again, Power BI or Power Query will go in the background and pass that data. Now, we'll notice some differences here to where we were within Power Query Online. So we can see that our first row has not been correctly identified as headers in this example. So we need to go ahead and do some transformations to our data in this scenario. Okay. I'll just show you how to do this. So with this being the case, we don't need to do the preview, so we can close that. We want to use this option here to select our first row as headers. We can see that our first row has now jumped up to headers. And alternatively, we can also see that our data types are actually incorrect here. So we can go ahead and use the icon here to set our data types. So just some subtle differences to be aware of when using Power BI Desktop as opposed to Power Query Online. Similarly, you'll go ahead and do exactly the same to get data for the sales training data as well. So we'll go ahead, use a web connector, go back to GitHub, get our raw version of our files for sales training.csv, copy that URL, come back down into Power BI, just paste that in. Again, go ahead, select OK. I'll just show you again just the nuances you're going to find here. So the first row is not headers in this example, and our data types have not been correctly defined. So again, you can just do this using the UI here to use first row as headers. And again, you can go ahead and select your data types. Now, what I'm going to do is just switch over to our previously created version of this demo and pick it up from where we left off in terms of ingesting that data. Again, the reason for doing this is just in an effort to stay on time. I'm very conscious that we've only got 10 minutes or so left. So in your example, what would happen is we've just ingested our sales training data. We've gone through and selected our file types, and we're now picking up from this example here. So what we want to do now is we have our sales training data. We want to create our machine learning model within Power BI Desktop for free. So at the top here, we can go ahead and use our transform menu item to open the transform ribbon. And we can see that we're able to select here to go ahead and start running some Python scripts. So by pressing this button, you'll be presented with our first new UI window, which allows us to run a Python script. Now, if you're following through at home, then we can just go back to our GitHub repo. Again, the link for this should be within the chat. And what we're looking at here is our first script. So we need to impute our data set for ML. So we can go ahead and select this script. We can copy this, go back to Power BI and paste this script in. Okay, once you select OK, you'll be presented with all of the data frames that have been created by that script. And the one that we're interested in this scenario is df_imputed. So go ahead and select table here. And what will happen is within Power Query, it will start to show us the underlying data. Now, what we've done here for the data is just imputed this data into data types that we can use as part of the Pycaret library to be able to run our machine learning algorithms as such. So with that being the case, you can probably see clearest here in marital status. Previously, we had male and female. We now have two values, which is 0.0 and 1.0. So this is the output from imputing that data. Now, once we have that data imputed, you can go ahead and run the next Python script. Okay. So within the next Python script, you'll be greeted with this window. And fortunately enough, from the GitHub, you can just go back to the root directory, go ahead and select Python script number 2, which is train data set for ML. Go ahead and select that script, copy that script out, and you can go ahead and paste that within this window here. Now, in this scenario, what we're doing here, again, without getting into too much of the technicalities, is we are defining our machine learning model, running our machine learning model similarly to how we did within the Power BI wizard, and then we're then getting back our predictions based on that model. So if you're following us along, go ahead and select OK. What will happen is we have a directory in which we will be exporting our pickle object information. So the pickle object is actually the machine learning model definition as such, which we will use later on in this example to combine, to run our predictions on our lead data. So go ahead, select OK. Now in the background, this will go away and run the machine learning model, defining all of its predictions. And once this is complete, again, all of your data frames will be presented to you. The one that we're interested in is our predictions table. So go ahead and select predictions, and you'll be greeted with our final step. And if we scroll to the right-hand side, you'll notice that we now have some additional columns. So because this is our historic buyer information, we have a buyer column, but we also now have our prediction label and our prediction score, similarly to what we were able to get from Power BI Auto ML. So we already have our prospective buyer data available to us, and we've now run our machine learning model and have our predictions. So let's go ahead and jump over to our prospective buyer. And again, we're just going to pick this up from where we previously imported the data. So we can see that we have our buyer information available to us here. And at the end, we still finish on postal code. We don't have any predictions as of yet. So what we need to do is go ahead and run a Python script. So once you select Run Python Script, you'll be greeted with this screen here. We can go back to our GitHub root folder, and you want to go ahead and select Python script number 3, which is impute the data. So once again, this is going to impute those categorical features and map those to data types that we can use for to run our machine learning model against. So go ahead and paste that in, select OK. And again, you'll be presented with exactly the same screen as before, whereby we're interested in df imputed and expanding by clicking here, this table. Once you do that, you'll be presented again with an imputed data set with our categorical features mapped. So we're now in a position to run our final Python script. which is going to run our lead information through our machine learning model, similarly to how we applied the machine learning model in Power BI within the service. So go ahead, select Run the Python script. You'll be greeted with this screen here. And again, if you're following along with the GitHub repo, this is our final script, which is number 4, pipe dataset for training. And this is arguably our smallest but most powerful script. So go ahead and copy that. And what we can see that we're doing here is we're using Pycaret to open our pickle object file, so our machine learning model definition. We're then going to use a random forest model to load that pickle object against the data set, and then we're going to return our predictions against the lead data. So go ahead, select OK, and you'll be presented with, again, the data frames. We're interested in the predictions table, so select that to expand it. And finally, what we'll have at the end of our lead information is our prediction label and our score for free within Power BI using Python and Pycaret. Now, as we imputed our data earlier, you'll notice that we have our first name and last name in this example still encoded. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I've just used the prospective buyer key by changing the type back to a numeric value, and just duplicated our prospective buyer table to join those back together so that we can actually use the actual first name and the last name to build out the same report that we did using the data flow in Power BI Premium. So let's go ahead and close that. In your example, again, please close and apply. But we already have this version created. So as I mentioned, because we have the duplicated table with a relationship, let's go ahead and select first name and last name from our duplicated table. And we want to go back to our predicted table and just select our label and our score. And finally, let's go ahead and make our rudimentary filter. And so let's sort our score descending. And once again, let's take a look at our label. We can clearly here define the predictions, which are going to be based on true for our leads as they come through. So those which our machine learning model predicts will become buyers for us, again, by sorting by score and potentially giving this back to our sales team. And alternatively, we can see those which have a false label, and we can define those as people that we're not looking to contact and to save the organization money from that perspective. So with that being said, that concludes our final demo for today. And I'll just finish up with a couple of slides before opening up for any questions. So we now have a vision, but how can we take this to a new level? So we can still use the likes of Pycaret to start to look at outlier detection, topic distribution, or even association rule mining as well. I've also got some more resources available for you. These will be available within the chat. There's a fantastic book called Extending Power BI with Python and R, written by fellow MVP Luca Zavarella. Also, the likes of KD Nuggets and towardsdatascience.com have an absolute plethora of information available on machine learning and data science. And also, as we mentioned before, the Anaconda website has some more information on the Anaconda distributions. And of course, Microsoft has more information available and tutorials on how you can build out machine learning models using AutoML. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining me in today's session. I hope you enjoyed it and opened up for any questions.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Leon. Thank you so much for a really wonderful session.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that was really great to see what Power BI can do with machine learning. And I think everyone learned a lot today.
Excellent. I know that it's a lot of information to get through in a short period of time, so we do gloss over a lot of the technicalities, but hopefully it's more a demonstration on what is possible as opposed to a deep dive.
Yes. Yeah, so for the audience, if you have any questions, you can still ask them here in the chat. So, but meanwhile, I had some questions here. So maybe just a clarification here regarding the different versions here, because we had a number of different tools here, like the Power BI desktop and the Power Query, and some are available in free versions and some are available in licensed versions. Maybe you can summarize that again here.
Yeah, no problem at all. So Power Query Online and Power Query on desktop are available through all versions, so from Pro, PPU, and Premium. Now, in terms of using the AutoML, which was the wizard that we walked through in our initial demo, that's a premium functionality. So it's only available via Power BI Premium or Power BI Premium per user. Data flows themselves are available in the Pro tier, the Premium tier, and the Premium per user tier, but you don't have access to any of the cognitive services, including machine learning.
Okay. Yeah, I can see here we actually have a question here from Gabriel. So Gabriel says, what is the minimum Python version needed to run machine learning in Power BI?
It's a good question. I don't believe that there actually is one. I think that from 2.7/2.8 upwards, you should be fine. But I wouldn't like to give a definitive answer. I tend to stick to the latest versions in the environments that I build out. So if I'm mistaken, anybody does have the initial answer to that, then please do let us know. But for Power BI Desktop, I don't believe that there is one.
Mm-hmm. I also saw that in addition to be able to run Python script, there's also the possibility to run R scripts. But is there any difference between these two? Is there any one that offers more functionality?
There isn't. I believe it's probably what you're most comfortable with. Some will say that R is a much superior language for data analysis, and some may even argue that case for visualization as well. From my perspective, I'm more comfortable from a Python standpoint. Now, both can be utilized within Power BI Desktop. There are some limitations in terms of what's available to be used within the Power BI service, but again, that would probably be more of an intermediate session to do a deep dive into that.
Okay, and we have some more questions here. So questions here from Charles, who says, "What are the books again that you were recommended?"
Excellent. So within the additional resources, I recommend a book by Luca Zavarella, and hopefully the link should be available to you in the chat. Now, the book is called, a good question. I'm going to have to dive back to that myself now. I've got the book right in front of me as well. But it's Extending Power BI using Python and R. And also a fellow MVP, Ryan Wade, also has a book on the topic as well, with a second version coming soon as well.
Okay, and another question here from Karuna, who says, "Is there any way to implement machine learning models in Power BI desktop version to work with?"
Yes, so hopefully, Karuna, you saw the second half of our demonstration there. So that's a way to use Python for free within Power BI Desktop to be able to work with machine learning models locally. It does require some experience with Python, but hopefully the GitHub that we've shared with you will allow you to get up to speed and running quite quickly.
Yes, nice. Do you have any question here, Gosia?
No, I think everything was really great. I just can't wait to just use your GitHub repo and check on my Power BI to see how it's worked for myself.
Excellent,
Yes.
excellent. Look forward to it.
Yes, so thank you very much for the session. It was really, really powerful. And yeah, I just can't wait to use this.
Excellent.
So
Thank
please,
you very much.
so thank you very much for the wonderful presentation here, Leon, and please stay online here while me and Gosia will wrap up this session. Actually, we got one more question here from Gabriel. Can we use VS Code instead of Anaconda?
Yes, you can use VS Code instead of Anaconda. Obviously, what you would need to do, the differences are that you would need to make Power BI aware of where your environment is. Once you've made Power BI aware of that environment, you can use whichever IDE you would like in terms of Python, so VS Code, Spider, and likewise.
And a question here from Charles, who says, can we use Power BI to do unsupervised learning like clustering? As I saw, you were using regression and classification and binary.
You can. So you can do this using Power BI Desktop and Python. It's probably the most powerful way to do it using the Pycaret library.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so please stay online here, Leon, while me and Gosia will wrap up this session here. But thank you once again for a very wonderful session.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to everybody for tuning in as well.
Yes, and if you want to follow Leon, he is on LinkedIn, and he is happy to answer a question if you have any more.
Yes. Yeah, so we just want to do some advertisement here for our next session. So our next session will be on April 20, and then we will have Johan Ludwig Brattås. He will be presenting on how we can build our own lakehouse in Azure. And then we also we're always looking out for speakers. So if you have something that you would like to present, you can find our call for papers here on our Sessionize page that you can see here on this slide. And I think with that said,
thank you to all of us. So we are Eve, Gosia, and Hakan, and we are all Microsoft AI MVP, and we are really happy to have you today.
Yes. Yeah. So looking forward. Hope to see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. See ya.